Good job. I wondered what he was going to say next, words of appreciation? And then, out of my husband's mouth, came something unbelievable. I'm setting you free. I'm giving you this bakery. I doubted my own ears.
What are you talking about?
My voice barely came out, but it didn't reach him. I've always thought it. You're my slave. Working from dawn till dusk, living every single day just for the sake of bread, right? I love running the bakery. I've never thought of myself as a slave. I resisted desperately. But my plea didn't reach my husband. Yet you resent me. I've never felt that way. I raised my voice, hoping to wake him up. No matter what you say, I don't want to be with you anymore. Just get it, will you? He raised his voice over mine. I couldn't say anything back. I stood up to follow him as he left, taking a step forward. The next moment, I tripped over something and felt myself falling. As I lost consciousness, I thought I heard my husband calling my name. The alarm clock rings at 5 a.m., the usual time. The bakery mornings are early. No, since my husband, Mark, starts preparing at 3 a.m., I'm actually taking it easy. I wash my face, get ready quickly, and head down to the workshop on the first floor. As I open the door, my husband is silently kneading the dough. Good morning. I greet him and start to help. He continues to knead the dough without a word. There's no conversation as I take the freshly baked bread out of the oven. But for 31 years, we've been running the store together like this. Now, it feels comfortable. Callie Martin, my name. I've been using this name longer than the one I had before marriage. And I suppose it will be my name until I leave this world. As I pondered such obvious things, the front door opened. Good morning. It's still pretty chilly today, huh? My niece, Rachel, came in. Is it that time already? Rachel is my husband's brother's daughter, and although she's already married, she comes to help out about 2 days a week. She works from 6:30 a.m. until 3 p.m. She's been interested in the bakery work since she was little, often peeking in. It's amazing how time flies. The little girl has now grown into a fine adult. You know, with Rachel here to help, why don't you take a little break? I suggested to my husband, and he replied with a barely audible yeah, waved lightly at Rachel, and went upstairs to our home. Uncle is still the same, huh? Rachel's eyes were smiling as she watched her uncle leave the workshop. I've always wondered, Callie, why did you marry Uncle? Rachel asked me while we were preparing to open the shop. Well, as I talked to Rachel, I was reminiscing about the past. Our meeting was 35 years ago. We worked together at a brokerage firm. My husband was in sales, and I was a secretary. We didn't interact much, but for some reason, I was drawn to him. Without ever speaking to him, I would just watch him from afar whenever I saw him in the office. One day, when I went back to the office to pick up something I forgot, I found him working overtime alone. I intended to leave without speaking to him as usual. But for some reason, I found myself heading to the break room. I think I was quite proactive. But at that time, it felt natural to make coffee for him. Good job, I said as I placed the coffee on his desk, and he looked up at me in surprise. Thank you. After he said that, a silence fell. Suddenly feeling embarrassed, I turned my back on him and hurried away from the spot. Just about finished here, so how about we grab some food after this? Suddenly, those unbelievable words hit me like a bolt from the blue. Huh? I turned around, but his gaze was not on me but on his desk. Could I have misheard? As I stood there confused, he spoke again. Please wait for me at the cafe downstairs. Yes. I nodded and walked away. I tried to calm my breathing as I took the elevator down. In the cafe on the ground floor of the building, I could see a few people from the same company, but I wondered if it was really okay for me to wait here. A mix of happiness and anxiety made me forget to even sip the orange juice I had ordered. Just before closing at 8 p.m. He arrived, panting. It took longer than I expected. No, that's not it. Sorry to keep you waiting. His flustered state was so amusing that I couldn't help but laugh. "I'm starving. Where are you taking me?" From that day on, my husband and I began to go out for meals together occasionally. The first place he took me was his favorite diner. Talk about no frills. After saying that, I changed the subject. The proposal is a secret to everyone. I've treasured it in my heart like a precious gem all this time. Well, it's almost time to open. The clock was about to strike 7 a.m. Our shop is in a shopping district. It's not as bustling as it used to be, but being close to the station, we still get a decent number of customers. It's just a regular town bakery, nothing famous or special. A customer from when my husband worked at a brokerage firm introduced us to this store. It was a turnkey shop, but it was enough for us. I was surprised when I first heard my husband wanted to start a bakery. Having watched my husband grow increasingly worn out from the excessive quotas at the brokerage firm, I quickly agreed when he suggested starting a bakery. He quit his job first and went to culinary school to learn baking, while I stayed at my job a bit longer to save up some startup capital. We didn't even have a wedding ceremony. Instead, we focused on opening our bakery, which we achieved about 30 years ago. My husband, the silent craftsman, and me, the cheerful face of our bakery. Everything was a first for us, and it was all quite challenging. Yet, I worked tirelessly, feeling fulfilled. Without the means to hire additional staff, we worked from dawn till dusk. Despite this, I became pregnant. My husband wanted to hire help so I wouldn't overexert myself, but I objected. I didn't want anyone else meddling in our store. I can see now that such pride was unnecessary, but back then, I was stubborn. And then, as if punished, the precious life inside me was lost. Moreover, I became unable to conceive again. I was engulfed in despair, not knowing how long I spent crying. Seeing me like this, my husband murmured, "I should have insisted on stopping you. I couldn't protect you and our unborn child. This isn't what I wanted for the sake of becoming a baker." His fists were trembling. "Let's quit the bakery," he said in a voice strained with emotion. Hearing this, I woke up. Who was I supposed to protect? Our unborn child was gone. Who was this person before me, ready to give up his dream? Hadn't I decided to support this man since the day he proposed to me? How could I, of all people, destroy his precious dream? Before I knew it, I was shouting, "We are not quitting the bakery." I looked straight into my husband's eyes. "I can't have children anymore. But this store is like our child, right? We've supported each other and raised this store together. Our customers have become regulars. We're starting to be loved as the local bakery in the shopping district. There's a different kind of challenge from when we were working corporate jobs, but my husband seems more alive now than ever before. That life was supposed to be our happiness." "I'm sorry." My husband hugged me tightly. "Look at me. You have nothing to apologize for. This store and our dream together, it's my purpose in life." He didn't say anything more, but I could feel his resolve in the strength of his embrace. Just as the customers thinned out, my husband came back. It wasn't for nothing we've been doing this for 30 years, and we have a routine down. Leaving Rachel in charge of the shop, I moved to the back. The morning bread is made by my husband, but the bread for the rest of the day is made by both of us. I've been learning from him and making my own recipes. I remember how nervous I was the first time my bread was displayed in the store so much, so that I couldn't focus on cashiering whenever a customer paused in front of my bread, and I even got scolded for not paying attention to customers waiting to pay. Now, I don't worry about whether it sells, but it still makes me happy when it sells out. I hope a lot of people buy today. I whisper as I shape the bread. Glancing at the clock, it's past 10 a.m. Around this time is usually when I take a break. After putting the shaped bread in the oven, I call out to my husband. "Could you take out the bread I just put in once it's baked? I'm going to grab something to eat now." It's the usual routine. My husband would normally just nod without saying anything. But today was different. "Don't be so selfish. Take out your own baking when it's done." It's been a while since I heard my husband raise his voice. Shocked by the sudden outburst, I was left speechless. Rachel peered in from the front of the store.
What's wrong?
I smiled at Rachel, trying to act like everything was fine. It seems my husband is irritated. Even after yelling, he's taking it out on things around him. The sound of him slamming the dough is rough. I decided not to provoke him further and waited for the bread to finish baking. Then, I let Rachel, who was tending the shop, know and went upstairs. I let out a few secretly. With a sigh, I walked into the kitchen and noticed over-the-counter allergy medicine on the table. It was my husband's. Lately, he's been suffering from sneezing and itchy eyes, so I bought the medicine from the pharmacy the other day. I wondered if it was helped him at all. He's never had allergies before, so it was surprising when these symptoms suddenly started. I've been telling him to go to the doctor, but he hates hospitals and hasn't been motivated to go. His outbursts, like the yelling earlier, are probably due to how bad he's feeling. It seems over-the-counter meds aren't working, so we'll go to the doctor together on our next day off. Deciding this, I quickly ate some bread with tea poured over it to refuel and headed back to the shop.
Sorry to keep you waiting, Rachel.
I told Rachel I was back from my break.
Callie, are you okay? Uncle seems kind of irritable.
Rachel whispered, trying to gauge my husband's mood from behind the counter.
He's been feeling a bit off lately.
Rachel looked surprised at first but shrugged after seeing my husband.
Don't worry, I won't let him hurt you.
If anything happens, I'll stop him. He's already so quiet, it's kinda scary. But I'm used to it. My niece's comments show how quiet my husband usually is. It's rare to see him so visibly emotional. Hearing us talking, my husband called out from the back. He was still in a bad mood. I'll head back in before I get yelled at again. Call me if it gets busy, okay? And so, we continued working together. Even though he stopped responding to my attempts at conversation, I kept talking cheerfully. By the time Rachel left, we had finished baking the day's bread. My husband took another break before the evening rush. As I manned the shop, I reminisced about the old stories I had told Rachel that morning. I've always tried to support my husband and maintain a smile, no matter what. And tried to maintain a smile, no matter what. But now, it's not working. It seems my cheerfulness only makes his mood worse. Unlike when he was worn out from his corporate job. Wondering what to do about it, my husband returned, and soon the customers started to come in more frequently. I stopped pondering and focused on my work. During the evening rush, my husband was preparing for the next day. As the flow of customers slowed, I began to prepare for closing. At 7 p.m., we closed the shop. I shut the shutter and started preparing dinner. When my husband finished his preparations, he came upstairs.
Great job today.
I greeted him with a smile. Usually, he would respond with something, but today he silently went to the bathroom. I doubt he'd listen if I suggested going to the hospital in such a bad mood. I felt as though there was heaviness in my stomach. I'm not usually one to dwell on the details, but his blatant bad attitude is getting to me. After finishing dinner preparations, I went out to the balcony for a change of scenery. The night breeze felt good on my cheeks. Across the residential area, a train passed by. The sparkling view calmed my mind. I gazed at the distant buildings, remembering the days when I used to work there. Anyway, if he's this irritable because he's not feeling well, we really need to get him to the hospital. I thought to myself. If we don't solve this fundamentally, I'll continue to suffer. No matter what is said or happens, I'll take my husband to the hospital. I steeled my resolve and went back inside. After my husband came out of the bath, we had dinner together. This might be the only chance for a proper conversation.
Hey, honey.
I began, trying to gauge his mood. He seemed more relaxed after the bath, his usual self. This was my chance.
How about we go to the hospital on our next day off? I'll come with you,
I suggested lightly. He stared at me, then sighed deeply.
The medicine we bought last time doesn't seem to work well. We're not getting any younger, so just to be safe, okay?
Please. I tried to sound endearing, despite our age. He looked away and sighed again. Deeper and longer this time. Not giving up, I clasped my hands in front of my face, peeking at him through my fingers. Please? What am I doing at 58 years old? Just as I was about to retreat, he finally spoke. All right.
What?
I thought I had misheard, but I hadn't.
All right, but try to speak more like your age.
Surprisingly, he agreed to go to the hospital.
A woman is always a maiden at heart, no matter her age.
My usual cheerfulness returned. After thanking him brightly, I went back to the shop to check on the sales. Even though he remained irritable, especially when the shop was busy, I kept reminding myself it was just until we could get to the doctor. The day of the appointment finally arrived. We woke up more slowly than usual and I started making breakfast. Soon, my husband also got up. While we were eating, my husband muttered,
Are you coming with me?
I was watching TV, but at his words, I stood up to get ready, replying, Yes. You hate hospitals, right? I thought it'd be better if we went together. As I placed our finished dishes in the sink, a loud bang came from behind me. Turning around, it seemed my husband had slammed the table.
What's wrong?
I tried to peer at his face, but his finger scratched against my cheek. I instinctively pulled back, and in doing so, I stumbled and fell. What just happened? He was never the type to raise his hand. As I crumbled, my husband loomed over me as if to add insult to injury. I covered my head with my arms, curling up to protect myself. Looking down at me, he spat out.
Always treating me like a child. I can go to the hospital by myself.
With that, he stormed out of the house. How long I remained stunned, I couldn't say. The sound of a single water droplet from the sink snapped me back to reality. Despite his irritability and harsh words, I accepted him entirely, wanting to be by his side. Was my support just selfishness? He was a kind man, silent but gentle. I knew the man who smiled softly at flowers blooming on the roadside and birds perched on power lines. Starting the bakery was about making people happy and spreading joy. His hands, when kneading dough, were supposed to embody that intention. I never thought the same hands would be used to hurt me. I couldn't believe it. No, I didn't want to believe it. Once we visit the hospital and find out it's nothing serious, he'll surely return to his usual self. Even if he apologizes, I might pretend to stay mad for a while. Once his condition improves, I'll let him take me out for a nice meal as a way of making up. I wonder if that diner where we first went out to eat is still open. In those times, I had no way of knowing. I was about to face something even more tragic. My husband, who should have been at the hospital first thing in the morning, didn't return until the evening. I thought he might have been killing time somewhere, feeling awkward about having lashed out at me, since it wasn't anything serious. But after dropping his bag at home, he immediately went down to the shop. I guessed he was still feeling awkward. Trying to change the mood, I decided to approach him, heading down the stairs. The sound of banging and clattering came from the workshop. Preparing for tomorrow? But it was unusually loud. Peeking in, I was shocked.
What are you doing?
My husband was throwing his baking tools onto the floor in a rage. I tried desperately to stop him, but I was no match for his strength and ended up slumped on the floor.
Stop it, please!
Lacking physical strength, I shouted as loudly as I could. My voice seemed to reach him, and he stopped. Panting heavily, and slowly turned to look at me. His eyes were filled with resentment and sadness.
What happened?
I asked gently, trying not to provoke him further. After recognizing me in tears, he started laughing. It was as if something evil had possessed him. Even a sense of madness.
What's going on?
The man before me was no longer the husband I knew. It felt like I was facing a stranger. Grinning, he said to me, "Well done." I wondered what he would say next, words of appreciation. Then, unbelievable words came out of his mouth. "I'm setting you free. I'm giving you this bakery." I couldn't believe my ears.
What are you talking about?
My voice barely came out, but it didn't reach him.
I've always thought it. You're my slave, working from morning till night, becoming infertile, living every single day just for the sake of bread, right? I love running the bakery. I've never thought of myself as a slave.
I resisted desperately.
I don't remember being overworked. Even after becoming infertile. Didn't we talk about this? That this shop is like our child.
But my plea didn't reach my husband. Yet you resent me.
I've never felt that way.
I raised my voice, hoping to wake him up.
No matter what you say, I don't want to be with you anymore. Just understand that.
He raised his voice over mine. I couldn't say anything back. Seeing I was silent, he turned his back silently and headed for the shop's entrance. I stood up from where I had been crouched on the floor, took a step to stop him. The next moment, I tripped over something, knowing I was falling. As I lost consciousness, I thought I heard my husband calling my name. When I woke up, I was in an unfamiliar place. How long had I been unconscious? I looked around. I was lying in a bed, surrounded by curtains. And 4 was in my arm, and my right leg was in a cast, suspended. I realized I was in a hospital but had no idea what had happened to me. How did I end up here after losing consciousness? Could my husband have? Holding on to a sliver of hope, I pressed the nurse call button. Eventually, a nurse came and explained what had happened and my condition, but none of the words I hoped to hear were spoken. The hospital had tried to contact my husband, but they couldn't reach him no matter how many times they called. It seemed Rachel had been contacted and had taken care of all the necessary paperwork. I let out a deep sigh. Where could my husband be right now? What could he be doing? With my mind still in a daze, I cycled through various thoughts until eventually, fatigue took over, and I fell back asleep. My diagnosis was overexertion and a fractured right leg. It happened when I tried to get up and confront him, tripping over a freestanding mixer that was left out, resulting in my fall and fracture. How pathetic. A month passed before I was discharged from the hospital. I had inquired about my husband's whereabouts with Rachel, who visited me, but she said, I don't know either. It seems he hasn't contacted Dad. It appeared he had genuinely vanished. On the day of my discharge, I hastily completed the procedures, eager to get back home. I couldn't count how many times I had blamed myself during my stay at the hospital. I intended well, but it turned out my husband found it distressing, and I wanted to apologize to him as soon as possible. I attempted to forcefully open the home's door. But it was locked. Was nobody there? I fetched the keys from my bag, unlocked the door, and went inside. The air was slightly stale in the quiet, musty space.
I'm home!
I called out, but my voice merely got absorbed into the room's depth. I took off my shoes and entered. The room looked much more spacious than I remembered. I felt nobody's presence as I returned home after a long time. And soon realized my husband's belongings were gone. I sat down on the spot for a while but eventually decided to check on the store. With a little wobble, I got up, dragging my poorly moving leg along, and made my way downstairs. The mixer workbenches were covered with sheets, signaling they hadn't been used for a considerable time. Will these machines never operate again? I wondered if I would ever see the smiling faces of our customers. I can't do this on my own. My heart was crying so. That our shop of 30 years could end so abruptly was unthinkable. I had believed I was supporting my husband, but I've come to realize that, in fact, he was the one supporting me. Remembering the days that will never return, I wept bitterly. Humans get hungry no matter what, and I was no exception. I went back home to satisfy my hunger, only to find expired milk, eggs, meat turning an off-putting color, and vegetables in the fridge. Stepping outside to buy something, I encountered a man standing there. Mr. Taylor? He was a lawyer my husband knew. He was a lawyer acquainted with my husband, a regular at the bakery and someone we've known since working at the brokerage firm. Knowing his profession, I had a bad feeling. I was planning to visit around the time Mrs. Martin was discharged from the hospital. I'm glad I could meet you. I didn't want to meet him. Unable to say this outright, I could only muster a forced smile. We entered a cafe on the shopping street. The owner, whether he knew the situation or not, acted in an unusually formal way towards us. As our coffee was served, Mr. Taylor began to speak.
I've been entrusted with this for you.
He handed me an envelope.
You probably know what's inside.
Before opening the envelope, I took a sip of coffee. The hunger in my stomach twisted into pain. Inside, as expected, were divorce papers and various other documents. I silently returned them to the envelope. After a prolonged silence, Mr. Taylor sniffled. Perhaps he had allergies too. When I finally looked up, surprised by what I saw.
Mr. Taylor? Why are you crying?
Tears were streaming down his face.
I'm sorry. I just can't hold it in any longer.
Confused, I was just fidgeting. Eventually, Mr. Taylor seemed to regain his composure after taking a deep breath. Then, after an embarrassed smile, he spoke as if he'd made up his mind.
Actually, I was told to keep quiet. But, you see, I'm also a fan of your bakery. I'd hate to see it go under.
According to Mr. Taylor, my husband's condition turned out to be an allergy.
Allergy to pollen?
No, to wheat. I was shocked. I can only imagine how much more shocked my husband, the actual person involved, must have been. Discovering he had developed a wheat allergy and couldn't continue running the bakery, my husband had decided to leave the bakery and all his assets to me, planning to live somewhere he wouldn't be recognized.
He had a hunch about it even before seeing a doctor.
That explained his irritability and taking it out on me. Though he felt terribly guilty for doing so. Thank you for telling me, even though you weren't supposed to. I quickly shared an idea I had with Mr. Taylor.
That's a brilliant idea. Please let me know once it's all set up.
Mr. Taylor smiled happily, and we left the cafe. Weeks later, I contacted Mr. Taylor. He took me to a location about 20 minutes by train from our home. In a residential area with several hills, we saw an old apartment.
It's there.
After climbing the hill and looking back, I could see the building of the brokerage firm where I used to work. Despite all the things that happened, I chuckled, and Mr. Taylor looked puzzled.
Sorry, it's nothing. Shall we go?
Following Mr. Taylor, we climbed the stairs to the second floor of the apartment. Mr. Taylor knocked on a door. A voice from inside responded.
It's Taylor, coming in.
The room was dim, but it was clear someone lived there. Mr. Taylor entered familiarly. I couldn't move from the entrance. Right inside, there was a kitchen and dining area, with one room further in. From the room, a familiar voice called out. Come on, don't just stand there, come in. Urged by Mr. Taylor, I peered into the back room.
You! What are you doing here?
As he spoke, he glared at Mr. Taylor.
You set me up!
My husband was trembling with clenched fists but suddenly started coughing. See, you shouldn't overdo it. You were told to rest, weren't you? My husband coughed painfully. I wanted to rush to him but restrained myself. I shouldn't inconvenience my husband with my unilateral emotions. Sensing my feelings, Mr. Taylor spoke to me. Look, Mrs. Martin. You had something to give him today, right? Prompted by his words, I remembered and handed my husband the paper bag I was holding.
I heard everything from Mr. Taylor. I just couldn't give up.
My husband peeked inside the bag.
I made a prototype.
What he pulled out of the bag was bread.
This is rice flour bread. It should be okay even with a wheat allergy, right?
I tried to sound playful. My husband took a bite of the bread I made. I could see his expression brighten instantly.
Maybe we don't have to give up the bakery or get divorced, right?
In the dimly lit room, I clearly saw tears glistening on my husband's cheeks. Years later. The alarm goes off at 7 a.m. Downstairs in the shop, work had already started. I got ready and headed down to the workshop.
Shall we switch?
I took over the work from my husband. It's been a few years since then, but our bakery is still running. However, it's not a wheat bakery anymore, it's a rice flour bakery. Rice flour bread made by a wheat-allergic owner has been featured in the media, and now we have customers coming from far away.
Good morning. It's still cold, isn't it? But I'm glad you pushed back the opening time, it really helps.
Rachel, who has had a child and leaves them with her husband's parents, still comes to help out. She's also started making bread in the workshop. As we prepared the dough together, we reminisced about old times.
I still want to hear about the proposal. I told you, it's a secret.
When my husband came back to the shop, he said the same words he had during his proposal. He probably doesn't remember. I couldn't help but chuckle.
Callie, you just remembered and laughed, didn't you?
Rachel teased.
Come on, stop laughing and focus on the prep.
Rachel muttered in agreement. Those words are my treasure. Now and forever.
Please continue to light up my life with your brightness.
Hey, how are we gonna get by with money today? It was when my husband had kindly suggested we go to a fancy restaurant for a meal. As I stepped out to the restroom, I happened to overhear a conversation between our son, Michael, and his wife, Natalie, who were also there by chance. I was shocked to hear them talking about how they managed to get into the restaurant, as they couldn't afford such a place, and reached out to the door of the room to ask them about it. I was speechless after hearing their conversation.
If we do this, we might not see Michael and his wife for a while.
I immediately reported Michael and Natalie's conversation to my husband and the restaurant staff, and we decided to carry out a certain plan. When the final confirmation came from Natalie, both my husband and I nodded strongly in agreement. We don't mind. If you could cooperate, we would greatly appreciate it. And so, our counterattack against Michael and his wife began. My name is Sally Turner. I am 80 years old, enjoying a comfortable and enjoyable retirement life with my husband. We share a hobby of playing gateball together. Sometimes, I spend my days alone, while my husband meets with his friends, and I enjoy conversations with the owner at my favorite cafe. We were living our days leisurely. We have a son named Michael. He must be around 50 by now. He is married to Natalie, and they live a harmonious life together. Natalie is a homemaker. And they have no children. Having kids would just take away all our time together. I still want to enjoy our leisurely time together. Michael would say, arm in arm with Natalie. To Michael, Natalie seemed like his soulmate, completely smitten with her. Initially, I found their affection for each other endearing, and I could understand their desire for alone time. However, Natalie's next words made both me and my husband freeze.
If we ever want one, we could just adopt instead of having our own. I don't want to go through the pain of childbirth,
Natalie said with a laugh. I was appalled by her comment. And equally baffled by Michael's laughter in agreement. Perhaps they were not thinking straight. Ever since then, we haven't been very close with Michael and his wife, Natalie. I felt that getting any closer could potentially worsen our relationship. However, perhaps the distance we maintained was just right, as we never had any mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problems. There were no troubles in daily life, and I thought time would just peacefully flow on. While I was almost forgetting about this incident, it happened. When I was shopping at the supermarket, I felt an unusual amount of stares and, turning around, saw several neighbors looking at me and whispering among themselves. Hello, everyone. Are you all shopping too? Curious, I approached them without any worry, but for some reason, they greeted me awkwardly. As if avoiding me. It was so obvious that I felt it instinctively, raising questions in my mind. Why would that be? The answer was simple. Because I had coffee with those same people yesterday. Who could have imagined that things would change so drastically overnight? I wondered if I had done something wrong and stood there, puzzled, for a while. Then suddenly, from the direction of the cashier, a man's loud voice shouting in anger filled the store.
So, how are you gonna take responsibility for this?
The man's loud yelling made me flinch, and everyone's gaze shifted towards the commotion. The store, which until then was filled with lively conversations, fell silent in an instant. The man continued to shout, and the cashier's voice, full of apologies, was the only thing echoing. We'll replace it right away. Please, just wait a moment. I'm telling you, I don't need the stuff. Don't you get that? I'm saying lower the price. I turned to the cashier in shock at the man who was making such an impossible statement. I was dumbfounded by the man's unreasonable demands and turned to look towards the cashier. Michael? It was my son, Michael, who was causing the scene. As soon as I caught sight of him, I hurried over to him. Noticing me, Michael turned around and greeted me with a nonchalant smile, raising his hand in hello. Oh, hey, Mom. Shopping? His demeanor had completely changed from the shouting moments ago to a friendly smile. Michael has always been kind to his family and tough on others since he was young, but it seems like that trait has intensified now that he's an adult. No, it feels like he's gone off track as a person. Shopping? That's not the point. Why are you making a scene and complaining so loudly like a fool? Huh? What do you mean, fool? There was a bug in the cabbage at this store. I almost ate it without noticing. A complaint or two is only natural, right? It was clear he realized I wasn't just stopping by to chat. But it was intervening. Michael's attitude changed drastically upon this realization, confronting me with hostility and explaining the situation in an aggressive manner. His behavior was so overbearing that I felt bewildered that this was my own son. A bug or two is nothing. Can't you just get it replaced? And you've been shouting about it like this. Aren't you embarrassed? Why do I have to be scolded? It's this supermarket's fault, right? They say they'll replace it, but just seeing that cabbage made me feel so sick, I was shocked. Just replacing it isn't enough. The more I tried to intervene, the more Michael's words escalated. Contrary to my embarrassment from the painful stares of the people around, Michael seemed to want even more attention, continuing to shout. It must have been his strategy to make a big scene to pressure the store. If the commotion went on any longer, it could lead to police involvement. Thinking this, I handed the cabbage to a clerk for the time being, left my empty shopping basket with them, and forcibly dragged Michael out of the supermarket. Mom! What are you doing? What am I doing? That's my line. Making such a scene over a piece of cabbage, you're out of your mind? Although I managed to pull Michael outside, calming him down was nearly impossible. And I, too, was exploding with anger at how my son had turned out. A full-grown adult causing a scene in front of a supermarket was bound to draw attention, which I knew all too well. However, my anger didn't subside, and the argument with Michael continued. Really, what's the big deal if there's a bug in the cabbage? It's proof that it's fresh. Are you out of your mind? Then, Mom, you can go ahead and eat cabbage with bugs on it every day from now on. How long are you planning to keep up this ridiculous argument that sounds like it's between two school kids? It seemed like someone had caught wind of the commotion, probably waiting in a car nearby. Natalie emerged from Michael's car. Our argument stopped at the sight of her, and Michael, with a puppy dog look, hurried over to her. Sorry, Natalie. Was I late? This was the first time I felt disgusted by Michael's fawning over his wife. Until now, I hadn't thought much of it, but his earlier behavior had drastically lowered my opinion of him. Late? That's an understatement. Did you get the money at least? Natalie's tone was oddly authoritative towards Michael. I felt a discomfort I hadn't noticed before. Well, I got interrupted by Mom. What? You didn't fail to get it, did you? She looked down on Michael as if he were a servant, her tone rough. I was speechless at her behavior, so unlike the woman I thought I knew. I'll go back and try again. Forget it. How long do you expect me to wait? Sorry. Against Natalie's harshness, Michael seemed as small as a cat being scolded. I found no words to say. As I watched them in disbelief, Natalie turned her gaze sharply towards me. Long time no see, mother-in-law. It seems you've caused some unnecessary trouble. Her words were cold and irritating. I asked her to repeat, not understanding her meaning, which only seemed to irritate her further. She gave me a cold, disdainful look.
Could you please not interfere in our matters from now on? Our livelihood is at stake, and it's really troublesome. Troublesome? You mean Michael's complaint earlier was?
Before I could finish, Natalie's intimidating presence made me stop. I felt the fear one might have when stared down by a wild animal, and I stumbled over my words.
I've told you, haven't I? Please, stop interfering from now on. I won't be responsible for what happens next.
After being left with such threatening words, I left with a dejected Michael, and she left the scene. I stood alone in the parking lot, unable to do anything but watch Michael's car drive away.
Could it be that their complaint was deliberate?
As I watched them drive off, I thought back to my last exchange with Natalie. Unnecessary trouble, their livelihood is at stake. That means, could they be deliberately making complaints to swindle money? And Natalie's attitude and tone. What on earth? I was soon to find out the answer to these thoughts. The day after the conflict with Michael and his wife, a close neighbor visited my home, looking quite frantic.
What's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry? It's terrible. Your daughter-in-law got into an argument with my husband.
This neighbor is the wife of the cafe I frequent. I had been avoiding the neighbors I saw at the supermarket, feeling awkward, but it seems Michael and his wife had visited the cafe. And just like yesterday, they suddenly made a complaint, causing the master, her husband, to become furious. Michael filmed the ordeal, and Natalie provoked the master, nearly leading to a confrontation. I hurriedly called my husband, and we went to her cafe together.
Look who I brought! What's going on with your son and his wife? They're causing trouble in my shop.
We, who also have a rapport with the master, immediately apologized at the scene.
We're truly sorry. We'll take them home right away. There you go again.
Michael clicked his tongue, and Natalie muttered annoyingly. Despite my rising anger, I wanted to calm the situation more than anything.
How dare you speak to your mother-in-law like that?
The master, even in such a situation, showed concern for us. I was moved by his gesture, but it seemed to irritate Natalie.
I married Michael, not anyone else. That's all that matters. More importantly, how dare you serve such awful food to customers? What did you say? You're still spouting that nonsense.
My husband intervened as the master was about to lash out.
We're deeply sorry. We will come back on another day to formally apologize for this rudeness. There are other customers here. Please, let's calm down for now.
My husband was apologizing. Seeing this, the master's anger subsided, and he said we don't need to pay for now, just take Michael and Natalie home. So, my husband and I silently took them back to our house and into the living room. As soon as she sat on the sofa, Natalie sighed heavily, looking annoyed, while Michael seemed eager to please her, flustered.
Do you understand what you've done?
It was my husband who spoke quietly. His expression was blank, but his voice carried anger. I had never seen him like this in all the years we've been together. It was so frightening that I shivered next to him.
What do you mean? I just complained about the taste, and I didn't want to pay for such awful food.
Natalie replied, unfazed by the situation. Instead, she glared back, as if she was the one in the right.
What you guys are doing is nothing short of being professional complainers. That cafe is a dear friend of ours, someone we owe a lot to.
So what?
That has nothing to do with us.
Natalie retorted, her disdain for common sense making my husband's anger grow further. I knew giving in to anger here wouldn't solve anything. So I decided to step in.
Natalie, you made Michael do the same thing at the supermarket yesterday, didn't you? Are you deliberately making complaints to save on the bill?
I voiced my speculation. Yesterday and today. Their actions were clearly beyond normal bounds. They were picking faults just to get things for free. Their actions and words were so excessive that no other explanation seemed to fit. Hearing this, Natalie burst into laughter. Laughing so hard she was crying, and both my husband and I were taken aback.
You're surprisingly smart, aren't you? Right? If there's a way to save money on meals, wouldn't anyone want to do it?
Despite her scheme being guessed, Natalie didn't show any sign of disturbance. Instead, she continued to laugh as if nothing was wrong. It was insane. We were at a loss for words at her behavior, unable to think of anything else.
Paying for food seriously is just too silly when there are ways to get it cheaper. I don't understand why everyone doesn't do it. Are you sane? You don't think that's criminal? Criminal, but you know, most places don't want to tarnish their reputation, so they hardly ever call the police. They usually just give in to our demands to keep things quiet. You're crazy. That way of thinking is not sane.
My husband, who had been silent, couldn't help but be taken aback by her statement. And as if mocking him, Natalie continued.
Maybe I am crazy. But, you see, I've been doing things bordering on criminal since I was young. It doesn't really bother me anymore.
That's when we first learned that she used to be the leader of a ladies' gang. She started to tell us about her upbringing.
I grew up without knowing my parents. Before I knew it, I was part of a gang, and this kind of life was normal for me. I don't think it's bad.
Natalie spoke nonchalantly, while Michael looked up to her as if she was someone to be admired.
I like strong-willed women like Natalie. If it's something Natalie wants, I'd do anything for her. Michael, you.
Michael, speaking admiringly of Natalie, made me feel regret that my own child had grown up to be such an adult.
So, if you keep pestering us, even if you're the in-laws, I won't hold back. Consider this your final warning.
With that, Natalie stood up, and Michael followed her out. We tried to stop them, saying the conversation wasn't over, but our words didn't reach them. As we watched their backs, my husband and I stood dumbfounded. After that, I tried to contact my son and his wife by phone and visited their house, but I was turned away at the gate. My calls were rejected, and we were left estranged. Since then, my husband and I have been looked at with disdain by the neighbors. In the countryside, gossip spreads quickly, and being ignored during greetings becomes commonplace. I felt mentally drained, even suspecting that people whispering on the roadside were talking about me. I went to apologize to the cafe we caused trouble for, but I was told not to come back as long as we were associated with my son and his wife. I was filled with regret and cried myself to sleep that night. I was overwhelmed with emotions so strong I wanted to disappear, crying silently into my pillow. I ended up bedridden for several days, too afraid to go outside. My husband takes care of all the household chores. One day, my husband invited me out for a change of pace.
A friend of mine who owns a restaurant wants us to visit.
The restaurant was run by his friend and wasn't open to the general public. My husband had apparently mentioned me, knowing I was feeling down, and they extended an invitation to us.
You've been moping around too much, haven't you? It must be tough. Let's eat something delicious and cheer up.
His gentle touch as he comforted me made me feel loved. I felt grateful once again for marrying him and decided to accept the invitation for a meal. I hadn't eaten much in the past few days, so my face had become gaunt. I tried to hide it with makeup, but my husband saw through it all, telling me I didn't have to force a smile. I felt inadequate but decided to go to the restaurant with him anyway. When we arrived, the owner and his wife welcomed us warmly.
Welcome.
We've been expecting you.
Long time no see. We appreciate your coming today. Please, make yourselves at home.
Our young chefs make exquisite cuisine. The warm demeanor of the owner's wife and the solid presence of the owner. They put my mind at ease. I weakly smiled and nodded at their words. Concerned about my weakened state, the owner's wife took my hand and guided me through the restaurant. The interior was impeccably clean and exuded a sense of cleanliness.
Welcome. We've been expecting you.
We were welcomed by the head chef with such vigor that lifted our spirits, which were feeling low. His enthusiasm was so infectious that we couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by it.
Today, I'll put extra effort into it and serve you delicious cuisine. The head chef's dishes are truly exquisite. Please, make yourselves comfortable and enjoy yourself.
The one who smiled at us like that was a female server. Her gentle smile soothed my heart, and a smile naturally returned to my face. It was at that moment, while enjoying the delicious food, that I had almost forgotten about my son and his wife.
Hey,
How are we going to manage our finances today? As I was heading to the restroom, I heard a voice I recognized from somewhere, coming from one of the private rooms along the way. After all, this is a place owned by Dad's acquaintances, right? It wouldn't be good to cause trouble here. Why are you getting cold feet? It's not like this place is any different from the ones we usually go to. Well, yeah, but since when did you become such a wimp? Seeing spineless guys like you just ticks me off. From the tone and the way of speaking, I quickly realized it was my son and his wife in that room. How did they manage to get into this restaurant? Just as I was about to ask, I reached for the door handle. The content of their conversation drained the color from my face. And just as I felt my knees go weak. Is something wrong? Are you feeling unwell? The head chef, who had come to explain the dishes, was there. I couldn't explain the situation and just managed to convey that I wanted to return to the room. But I was so weak-kneed that walking properly was difficult. With just a word, the head chef seemed to understand my situation and offered some reassurance. Sorry, perhaps this isn't appropriate for a lady, but... Despite calling it an emergency, he lifted me up and carried me back to the room. Upon being hurried back to the room, I found my husband, wife, and the gentleman all gathered inside. Gasping for breath, the head chef appeared with me, surprising us both, while his wife hurriedly rushed to my side. The head chef helped me into a chair and discreetly led me into the room, trying not to attract attention.
What's wrong? Are you okay? My body is fine. But, you... Something terrible's happened with Michael and his wife.
What happened? Seeing my pale face, my husband offered me a cup of tea to calm down for the moment. After taking a sip of tea and taking a deep breath to calm my mind and actions, I explained the conversation I had overheard and the situation from earlier. Come to think of it, indeed, today, the Turner couple are dining here.
What?
As we talked, it suddenly dawned on me that we had brought Michael and his wife to this restaurant when they got married. At that time, the owner had made us membership cards, assuming they were our sons. So, that's how they managed to come here for a meal. I'm sorry. It's all my fault for meddling.
Why are you apologizing? We're the ones who should be apologizing.
More importantly, what should we do? It wouldn't be good if they caused a scene in the restaurant. As we all fretted over the situation, the head chef proposed something. How about this? Upon hearing his suggestion, we felt reluctant but didn't see any other choice. But, wouldn't that inconvenience you, chef? Don't worry about it. If I can help you ladies, a little inconvenience like this is nothing. With a hearty laugh, the dependable head chef reassured us, and both my husband and I smiled in return, albeit with furrowed brows. But, if we go through with this, we probably won't see our son and his wife for a while. The wife, with a stern look, confirmed our determination. Exchanging glances, my husband and I nodded subtly. It's okay. If you're willing to help, we'd like to ask for your cooperation. Are you sure about this? Yes. We can't stop those kids ourselves. Please, we're counting on you. After being reassured by the owner once again, my husband and I both bowed deeply. And thus, our retaliation against our son and his wife began.
Hey, get the manager over here.
Afterward, as expected, Michael's wife started shouting in the restaurant, and customers began to peek out from the private rooms, wondering what the commotion was about. I'm the head chef here. The head chef rushed over and asked my son and his wife what was wrong.
There was a hair in the soup they served us. How are you going to make this right? We're paying good money here, so take responsibility.
As usual, my son's wife started complaining. Her behavior stirred up the other customers, and worried voices could be heard from the staff. A hair, you say? However, the head chef remained calm and composed, addressing the situation with a firm attitude. Upon seeing the soup with a hair in it, he seemed to notice something odd. This hair doesn't belong to any of our staff. In the face of the chef's calm analysis, my son and his wife stared at him with a startled expression. The surrounding customers, upon hearing his words, became intrigued, and everyone in the restaurant focused on the interaction between my son's couple and the head chef.
On what basis are you saying that? We don't have any staff with dyed hair in our restaurant. Furthermore, a hair this long wouldn't belong to any female staff either. What are you talking about?
My son's wife became flustered by the chef's calm observation. However, to support my son's wife, my son himself started to protest.
Are you accusing us, the customers?
Not at all.
However, if this was intentionally placed by a customer, that would be a big problem, wouldn't it? Shut your big mouth until you have evidence we did it. Once evidence is presented, you're okay with me speaking up?
Now, the wife, who had been listening, intervened, followed by the husband showing up. With everyone maintaining a firm demeanor, my son's couple looked around in dismay.
What you're doing is a clear crime, you know? It might be wise to consider your position before causing any more trouble, don't you think? What's with you guys since earlier? Is this how you treat customers in a high-class establishment? You're not customers or anything like that.
As my son's couple persisted without giving up, the husband directed his words at them. Upon recognizing a familiar voice, the two of them turned towards me and my husband, wearing puzzled expressions.
It's you two again? What are you doing here? That's our line. This is our dear friend's restaurant. It's about time you stopped causing a scene. You call this a disgrace? There was a hair in the food. This is a legitimate protest. It's absurd to complain about it. And we know that you intentionally put the hair in there.
With that, I pointed to the ceiling of the restaurant. There, a black, round fixture was installed.
What do you think that is? You don't know? That's a security camera. So what?
With a condescending tone towards my ignorant son's wife, she expressed her anger. Despite giving me a defiant look and attitude while glaring at me, she still didn't seem to grasp the existence of the camera. It was my son who first realized the situation.
Hey, isn't that? What are you talking about? Why are you suddenly turning pale? It seems Michael has noticed. He understands what the security camera means. So, what about it?
My son's wife, frustrated by the exchange, showed disgust. Seeing is believing. Thinking it would be quicker to show rather than tell, my husband opened the door and pointed to the ceiling. There, a security camera was indeed installed.
That camera can view in all directions, 360 degrees, right?
Understanding what this meant, even my son's wife seemed to catch on. With her mouth opening and closing like a fish, her face gradually turned pale.
If you're still not convinced, we're willing to go as far as DNA testing that hair or whatever you want. We're prepared to fight to the end.
As if to drive the point home, the husband started to threaten them with a smile on his face. And as this unfolded, the sound of sirens could be heard from outside the restaurant.
What? Oh, looks like our ride's here. Ride?
My son's wife, now with a pale face at my words, reacted. In response, with a cold smile on my face, I uttered coldly.
It's time for you two to part ways for a while. What's going on?
As my son's couple struggled to comprehend the situation, the police appeared. They surrounded them and began to inquire about the situation.
Is it you two? You're the ones causing obstruction of business and attempting to falsely accuse others of extortion. Obstruction of business? It's them. They've been making baseless complaints to the restaurant, trying to get free meals.
Interrupting my son's attempt to justify himself, I explained the situation to the police. Although my son and his wife resisted upon hearing this, the officer warned them that further resistance would only worsen their charges, and they immediately quieted down.
For now, let's discuss this calmly at the station. Shall we go together? What? We haven't done anything wrong. Give it up. The police have already been briefed on the situation. They know all about your attempts to fabricate lies and bring down this restaurant. And your despicable acts so far. You'll be given a proper hearing. That's right. We'll listen to your side of the story for as long as it takes. Now, shall we?
With a smile, the police officer calmly suggested, but his smile conveyed a sense of intimidation. Even my hot-tempered son's wife had no choice but to comply quietly. "Then, we'll take you with us. Thank you very much." And as we watched my son's couple being escorted away, the restaurant erupted in applause.
That was awesome. Great acting, chef.
I was sweating bullets, thinking I might get caught. Grateful for the warm words of the regular customers, my husband and I couldn't help but feel thankful.
Thank you so much. Not at all. If this brings peace of mind to you, we're more than satisfied. But the chef's suggestion turned out to be right. If it's the kind of thing they would do, you can usually figure it out.
Laughing as he spoke, the chef's confidence left both me and my husband in awe. That suggestion from the chef at the time. It was to shake up my son's couple.
We do have female employees with light brown hair, and while the camera is indeed a surveillance camera, it doesn't provide a 360-degree view. I was wondering what to do if things went south. It was a gamble, but we managed to handle it well. And it's all thanks to you and everyone's response. Thank you so much.
Warm voices from the restaurant reassured us, saying not to worry. The staff explained the situation to the customers, and everyone rallied behind us. We had asked them to help in case my son's couple caused trouble, and everyone acted like actors, just as we requested. Now, let's resume our enjoyable meal. Today, it's on the house. Everyone rejoiced at the generosity of the husband, and we were able to have a good time. Afterward, my son's couple was sued by the restaurant and faced a hefty compensation claim. They were taken to court, and it was highly likely they would receive a prison sentence. Moreover, it was revealed that they had posted a video on social media of a previous altercation with the owner of a nearby cafe. This led to another lawsuit against them, and their reputation became so tarnished that everyone in town knew about it. Naturally, it became difficult for my son's couple to live in the town, and they left town as if fleeing. My husband and I tried various ways to repay the cafe and the high-end restaurant we were indebted to, and eventually decided to use social media to highlight the strengths of both eateries. With the help of acquaintances who were knowledgeable about the web, our efforts paid off, and both businesses flourished. We managed to reconcile with our neighbors, and now we can once again go out for tea as a couple. Since then, we have severed ties with my son's couple, and my husband and I are still living happily even though we are over 80 years old. We're so content every day that we hardly even think about what happened to my son's couple. This incident served as a stark reminder that seeking rewards without effort leads to punishment.
Yes, your lunch. No frozen food today either. Thanks, I'm off.
I make lunch for my husband every morning. It's tough with twin toddlers, but my husband is supportive with childcare. That's why it seems we can manage both parenting and our marriage well. I used to think so. Hey, someone's been dumping kitchen waste in the trash can outside our store. Was that your husband? That's not allowed, you know. What? No way I'd do that. Is my husband really doing that? It wasn't clear because it wasn't in a transparent bag, but I saw a white plastic bag and could vaguely make out something like rice inside. Maybe leftovers? Any idea? No clue. He doesn't even take out the trash. Maybe I saw it wrong then. Should have checked properly. But I can't just pull it out of the trash. I'll ask him about it. Until we figure it out, could you not mention it if you see him? I lied to my friend. It was probably the contents of his lunch that my husband dumped. The supermarket where my friend works is between our house and the station. And he passes by it on his way to work. But why would he do such a thing? The reason became clear soon. Hey, long time no see. Can you let me in? What's up? My husband and I used to work at the same place. A colleague from that time brought my drunk husband home. Should I carry him to bed? No, that's fine. Just leave him there. Is it okay to let him sleep at the entrance? Better than him throwing up in bed. Just let the drunkard sleep there, a towel under his head will do. By the way, why did he drink so much? Didn't you hear? There was a farewell party today. Remember, for the person you both knew. Ah, right. He probably drank a lot trying to liven up the party, as salespeople do. Now that you mention it, I think I forgot about the farewell party. Must be hard with twins and still making such nice lunches every day. Forgetting once in a while can't be helped, right? Wait, lunches? He's supposed to be throwing away the lunches, but my husband is eating them at work? As I listened to his story, the reason why my husband was dumping the lunches I made came to light. Upon discovering the truth, I decided to make him pay. I'm Sally. I'm 28 and work in sales. My husband, Tom, is 4 years older and we used to work at the same place, having a relationship. We married after dating for 2 years, born from a workplace romance. I love my job, so I continued working even after we got married. And I was fully intending to keep working even if we had kids. However, when I actually got pregnant, something unexpected happened, and I found myself wondering whether I should continue working. Turns out, the baby in my belly is twins.
Really? That means we're going to have 2 kids at once.
Yeah, but what's wrong? Aren't you happy? Of course, I'm happy. It's just, with twins, the childcare burden is going to be double, right? I'm wondering if it might be too hard to keep working. That's true. You do want to keep working. Are you thinking about quitting your job to focus on the kids? I'm considering it, but there's the issue of money.
Don't worry. I'll work harder, so you can focus on raising our kids.
Okay. But we'll be really tight on just your income. I'm sure we'll struggle when it comes time to pay for their education, so I might take a part-time job or go back to work then. Life is going to be tough from here on. But I'm determined to raise our kids well. With this resolve, I rubbed my belly, sharing my determination with the twins inside. 9 months pregnant. I left my job.
Take care and have healthy babies. Thank you. You're going to be working with Tom now, right? If he ever gives you a hard time, let me know. I'll give him a piece of my mind.
I wouldn't do that. After working for 6 years, I received a warm send-off from my colleagues. New employees, being only 2 years in, still had me worried. If possible, I would have liked to continue working. But right now, the babies in my belly come first. I left my job with a sense of nostalgia. Yet I don't think I had to quit because of the babies. I simply shifted my happiness from work to parenting. And who knows, maybe I'll return to work once the kids are a bit older. Feeling fully prepared, I eagerly rubbed my belly, longing to meet my children soon. About a month after quitting, the kids were born safely.
You did great. Both are healthy boys.
Shall we stick with the names we decided? Or, did seeing their faces change your mind? Let's keep the names we decided. The older brother will be Jack, and the younger one will be Noah. Watching my children cry vigorously, I imagined a bright future and braced myself for the upcoming parenting journey. However, parenting was tougher than I imagined, and despite my determination, my spirit was nearly broken after just 3 months. Ah, finally, they've fallen asleep. Hey, now Noah's started crying. Just when Jack finally calmed down. When one stops crying, the other starts. My nights are mostly sleepless, soothing the twins' night cries. Facing childcare for the first time, and with twins no less, felt like a harsh trial given by fate. I kept telling myself it would get easier as they grow a bit more. If only my husband would help with the childcare. Hey, Noah is crying. Oh, now Jack started too. Hurry up and calm them down. I'm tired from work and just want to eat in peace. I'm exhausted from twin childcare and haven't had a peaceful meal since they were born. Irritated by my husband's words but prioritizing the children, I ignore him. I used to complain to my husband a lot at first. But I stopped since it was just a waste of energy. Can you at least take care of Jack and Noah a bit? I do bathe them, don't I? That's all you do. Do you have any idea how much more there is to do? But hey, you quit your job to focus on childcare, right? I'm working hard in exchange, so it's only natural you take on more of the childcare burden. While I'm changing the kids' diapers, my husband sits on the living room couch, drinking beer. He can't even pause his drinking to help change a diaper. Indeed, my husband has been working hard for our kids. Since I quit my job, he started working late and his weekends at work have increased. He also sometimes works or studies outside on weekends because the kids make it hard to concentrate at home. In the beginning, he did help with the childcare. But as he realized how tough it was, he began to leave almost everything to me, resulting in me handling it all on my own. I won't last if this continues. So, I decided to talk to a friend who has experience with parenting. I'm struggling because my husband hardly helps with the kids. Relying on your husband is a waste of time. Men think they're doing enough just by helping a little. Was Mary's husband like that too? Did you do all the childcare by yourself? Pretty much on my own. I found ways to save time and effort. Is there anything I can do right away? Well, you make lunch for your husband, right? Knowing you, you're probably seriously making eggs every morning? Well, I have to make the side dishes. With twins, it's okay to rely on frozen foods. Frozen foods, huh? Today's frozen foods are really well made. There are plenty at the supermarket where I work. Why don't you try buying some next time? Maybe I will. Hearing my friend's story, I realized I'm not the only one with an unhelpful husband, and decided to accept that this is what parenting is like. Also, I decided to try using frozen foods, following my friend's advice. These frozen foods would later become the small trigger for a significant incident. I went to the supermarket recommended by my friend to buy frozen foods. The supermarket, open 24/7, is a large store. Therefore, the frozen food section was also extensive. There were standard items like fried chicken and pizza, as well as more unique options like beef stroganoff and a spinach and walnut salad. There were also cut vegetables and desserts. Overwhelmed by the variety, I just chose a few items that seemed easy to use for lunch. After shopping, I decided to try the frozen dumplings I bought for my lunch. Eating them, I was surprised. Even though it was microwaved, the skin was still crispy. Of course, I don't make dumplings from scratch. However, instead of buying them from the frozen or deli section, I always bought chilled dumplings. Because they're crispy and delicious when cooked. Thinking this, my image of frozen foods changed drastically after eating these frozen dumplings. The next morning, I decided to put frozen fried chicken in my husband's lunchbox. It's meant for lunchboxes, so it thaws by lunchtime without needing to be heated. I was quietly thrilled to fill up the side dish space in the lunchbox with just that fried chicken. Finding this convenient, I started to use frozen foods more often. Since it significantly reduced the time needed for my lunch and my husband's lunch preparation, I was pleased with my choice. However, my husband did not feel the same. You've been using frozen foods in my lunch lately, haven't you? The frozen foods nowadays are delicious, right? They save so much time, so it's really helpful. I understand childcare is busy, but having almost all the lunch sides be frozen foods is kind of embarrassing, isn't it? Just bear with it until Jack and Noah get a bit bigger. Making lunch is really hard, you know. You quit your job for childcare, right? But using that as an excuse to skimp on lunch. I don't know. My husband had stepped on a landmine. I wonder if Mary's husband ever said something like that to her. I couldn't stand it. Furious, I decided to teach my husband a lesson. All right. I'll put in a bit more effort tomorrow, just like you wanted. I'm counting on you. It's me who gets embarrassed at work, after all. My husband walked from the living room towards the bedroom. I glared at his back with anger and a mischievous smile. The next morning, I couldn't just not give him a lunchbox, so I did make one. Here. Be grateful that I put in the effort, just like I said yesterday. You seem to be in a bad mood this morning. My husband seemed clueless about why I was upset. At this point, I had no expectations of him, so I felt nothing. Besides, since he took his lunchbox, my mood had already improved. That night, as soon as my husband came home, he apologized to me. "I'm sorry for everything up to now. I'll help with the childcare from here on." What happened? I did play a prank on him with the lunchbox. But him offering to help with childcare was unexpected, so I was surprised. With a guilty look, my husband handed me the lunchbox. "The lunch today, you just filled it with sandwich bread and cut out cheese, saying against solo parenting, didn't you?" My coworkers saw it. I was cornered by the female employees and after explaining, got a lot of flack. It seems like women do understand each other. The prank I did out of spite seems to have solved my solo parenting problem. But seeing my husband's remorseful face and knowing he was attacked by others made me think I might have gone too far. I might have gone too far. I'm sorry. I won't use frozen foods anymore. It's fine to use them if they're convenient. All right. Then I'll use them when things get tough. After that, my husband started to help with childcare. There were times he didn't know what to do or wasn't very attentive, but if I told him what I needed, he would do it right away. Not only was the burden of childcare lighter, but having a cooperative husband also lifted my spirits. "Here's your lunch. No frozen food today." "Thanks, I'm off." The lunch issue was resolved, and things seemed to be going well. I thought we could manage parenting and our marriage without any problems from now on. But my husband was betraying me behind my back. A few days later, I got a complaint call from a friend. "Tom has been dumping kitchen waste in the trash can in front of our store." "What's that about?" "You're not making him do it, are you?"
What? No way I'd do that. Is my husband really doing that?
I couldn't see well because it wasn't in a transparent bag, but I saw a white plastic bag and could vaguely make out something like sandwich inside. Maybe leftovers? Any idea? No clue. He doesn't even take out the trash. Maybe I saw it wrong then. Should have checked properly. But I can't just pull it out of the trash. I'll ask him about it. Until we figure it out, could you not mention it if you see him? I lied to my friend. It was probably the contents of his lunch that my husband dumped. The supermarket where my friend works is between our house and the station, and my husband passes by it on his way to work. It seems he's been throwing things away there. But why would my husband throw away the lunches I made for him? There might be a reason, maybe it was just that day. I didn't want to believe that my husband was throwing away the lunches, so I convinced myself of more favorable explanations. Also, I couldn't bring myself to confront my husband because I kept telling myself he wasn't throwing them away. Then, 3 days later, my friend called again. "Your husband seems to be dumping kitchen waste here every day. Did you talk to him about it?" "Ah, sorry. I've been so busy with the kids that I put it off and then forgot." My hope was unfounded, and it wasn't just a one-time thing. My husband has been doing it daily. Maybe the issue with the frozen foods had an impact. I slumped onto the sofa and sighed deeply. I can't keep causing trouble for the supermarket. I decided to confront my husband about the lunches when he got home from work. However, that night, he came home in no condition to talk. "Hey, long time no see. Can you let us in?"
Mike! What happened?
Around midnight, my husband returned, supported by his junior. I opened the door and let my husband and his junior into the house. As my husband entered, the entrance was immediately filled with the smell of alcohol. He couldn't stand without support from his colleague. It seemed he drank a lot. Should I carry him to bed? No, that's fine. Just leave him there. Is it okay to let him sleep at the entrance? If he throws up in bed, it'll be a mess. Just let the drunkard sleep here, a towel under his head will do. By the way, why did he drink so much? Didn't you hear? There was a farewell party today. Remember, for the person you both knew. Ah, right. He probably drank a lot trying to liven up the party, as salespeople do. Now that you mention it, I think I forgot about the farewell party. It must be tough with twins and still making such beautiful lunches every day. Forgetting once in a while can't be helped, right? Wait, lunch? I was caught off by his comment. My husband has been throwing away his lunches every day. I thought he was buying lunch at a convenience store or eating out because of that. But despite throwing away the lunches I made, it seems he's been eating them. And what does he mean by a beautiful lunch? Right now, I don't know the details, and it's probably not something I should be discussing with others. Yeah, it's tough every morning. Continuing from the time with my friend, I lied again. But this time, not over the phone, and my facial expression could be seen. He didn't miss my subtle expression. Yeah, I can imagine it's hard. My subtle expression made the junior match his conversation to mine, sensing the mood. I could tell from his subtle expression that he understood. But this feels like a kind of mutual understanding we shouldn't have. I have a taxi waiting outside, so I'll be going now. Wait a minute. Sensing the uneasy atmosphere and trying to leave quickly, I grabbed his collar from behind to stop him from leaving. I had a hunch that he knew something about my husband. There's something you know about him, isn't there? Tell me. Please don't say you heard it from me. Knowing resistance was futile, the junior started to share information. That was what I desperately didn't want to think about. The rumor at work is that Tom might be having an affair with a female coworker. There's no evidence, but you know, such talk doesn't come from nowhere. And my subtle reaction to the lunch topic must have added credibility to those rumors. Yes. Seeing your reaction, it seemed like Tom isn't getting lunches made by you, yet he's eating lunch at work. So, people are thinking maybe those lunches were made by the coworker he's suspected of having an affair with. I see. Throwing away the lunches might be because it would seem odd if he said he didn't need them anymore. Maybe the affair started when I began including frozen foods in the lunches. Seeing a lunch full of frozen foods, the other woman might have offered to make them. Got it, thank you. Sorry for holding you up. Don't mention this conversation to my husband, okay? He nodded silently and left. At the entrance, my husband lay snoring loudly, reeking of alcohol. Leaving my husband's disheveled form at the entrance, I went back to the living room and grabbed his pay stub from the shelf. I usually check his salary amount through the bank account, so I had never looked at his pay stubs before. Since our children were born, my husband has been working hard, often coming home late and working more weekends. However, when I checked the working hours and overtime on the pay stub, the numbers clearly didn't add up. The colleague had said it was just a rumor, but I was convinced it was true. Knowing the truth, I decided to bring my husband down to hell. A week later, I was sitting in the living room with my arms crossed, waiting for my husband to come home from work. I'm home. Hey, why such a scary face? Just sit down, quickly. I made my husband sit across the table from me. He looked anxious, not knowing what this was about. Don't you have anything you want to tell me? What? That's a pretty broad question. Nothing in particular. Oh, is this one of those traps where you pretend not to suspect anything but you're trying to make me confess? I haven't done anything wrong. My husband said that, but he wouldn't look me in the eyes. If he thought he was being accused of infidelity, he should be more flustered. He's probably thinking that I've found out about him throwing away the lunches. Let's start with the lunch issue then. There were days when I had you watched. I got to know what kind of person you really are. Watched? You're supposed to be taking care of Jack and Noah. You couldn't possibly have time for that. I wasn't tailing you myself. First, look at this. I showed him a photo on my smartphone and placed it on the table for him to see. Is this a picture of the supermarket? Yes. A friend of mine who works there took it. I didn't know you had a friend working at a supermarket. Why didn't you tell me? I did tell you. I can't remember when, but I think I mentioned that a friend works there. It was just casual conversation, and you didn't seem that interested, so it probably just slipped your mind. My friend was troubled. You've been dumping kitchen waste there every day. So, you knew all along that I've been throwing away the lunches. I had told my friend to not say anything if she found my husband dumping the lunches. Thus, my husband continued throwing away my lunches. While wasting lunches is regrettable, it was convenient for me. Knowing there might be an affair, I explained the situation and had my friend take photos of my husband dumping the lunches. About the lunches. I guess frozen foods just don't suit my taste, or eating them every day isn't good for my health. To me, the lunch issue was just an entry point to bring up the affair. But my husband, thinking this was the main issue, was making excuses with all his might. His actions seemed almost comical to me, leaving me speechless in disbelief. Then, mistaking my silence for pressure, my husband started apologizing profusely.
I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. I won't throw away the lunches anymore. Please forgive me.
Forgive you? But if you were throwing away the lunches, what were you doing for lunch? I was buying lunches from the store. But didn't you say you didn't want to eat frozen foods because they're bad for your health? That was just an excuse I made up on the spot. The truth is, I just wanted to freely choose what I wanted to eat. My husband's story, filled with lies upon lies, was becoming more contradictory. He seemed aware of his flimsy excuses, as sweat began to bead on his forehead. However, this wasn't the end goal of my conversation, so I moved on to the next step. Store lunches have gotten quite elaborate, haven't they? Going to the trouble of packing them in a lunchbox for you? A lunchbox? I left my phone on the table, sliding to the next photo to show him. Is this the lunch you ate at work? How do you have this photo? Didn't Mike take a photo of your lunch a few days ago? He said he wanted to show it to his wife for reference. Oh, right, he did come to take a photo for that reason. That's from then. Let's get to the main point. You've been receiving these lunches from a female coworker you're having an affair with, haven't you?
What? What are you talking about?
My husband suddenly yelled at me, accusing me of suspecting an affair. However, his reaction, clearly meant to hide his agitation, had no effect on me. Pretending to be angry while my husband panicked, I slowly cornered him further.
So, I heard there's a rumor going around the office that you're having an affair with a coworker. Well, rumors like that don't come out of nowhere, though that woman probably doesn't know she's being talked about like this.
Rumors? Oh, rumors. Hearing the word rumor, my husband's anxious expression turned into a smirk. Thinking he found a way out. It's just a rumor. You believe that? Being accused of an affair without any evidence is just unbearable. If there's no evidence, as long as he doesn't admit it, he thinks he can escape the accusation. It's a common and effective tactic for someone who has done wrong to try and escape. However, I won't let my husband get away with such a typical method. I left my smartphone on the table and slid to the next photo.
Why do you have this kind of photo?
What appeared on the smartphone screen was a photo of my husband and his affair partner coming out of a love hotel. My husband looked away from the smartphone and stared at me. His surprise overtaking his panic.
It seems like after leaving work on time, you hurriedly have dinner with this woman, then head straight to a hotel, and come back home just before the last train. This outlines your whole day from throwing away the morning lunch to coming back home from the affair. How about that? I've been keeping a close watch, haven't I?
How did you get this photo? I hired a detective agency. Do you want to see the investigation report? A detective? Is it that easy to hire one? It's not easy. I was surprised myself when I looked it up. Hiring a detective can cost from $400 to $600 just for an hour of work. Infidelity investigations, where they don't know who, where, or how often the meetings occur, can take months and cost tens of thousands, sometimes even reaching a lot more. And you spent that kind of money just to catch me cheating? How much did you spend? $20,000? $40,000? As if a stay-at-home mom could afford that, even working, that's not an amount I can just come up with. But in your case, I knew the affair partner was a female coworker. Plus, the late nights were on affair days, right? Living together, I noticed you coming home late was concentrated towards the end of the week. So, we narrowed down the investigation timing significantly. We started surveillance from your Wednesday's regular leaving time. The first day you came straight home, but the next day we got a photo of you leaving with the affair partner from work. The investigation only took 2 days, so it was cheaper. Just 2 days and you caught me cheating. That's right. But even though it was cheaper because it only took 2 days, it still cost $3,000. So, you'll be paying a fair amount in alimony. Alimony? If infidelity is proven with evidence, divorce is inevitable, right? And if it's a divorce due to infidelity, it's only natural to receive alimony.
No, divorce is too sudden.
The divorce is already decided. Can you pack your stuff and leave quickly?
Why do I have to leave?
Are you suggesting Jack and Noah and I should stay in a hotel, or that I leave the kids with a cheating husband and go out myself? You seem to only think about yourself. Forgetting the existence of your children is unimaginable. There's one more reason for divorce now. My logical knockout seemed to work, as my husband quietly left the house. Seeing my husband leave made the kids laugh, and I felt like they were praising me for doing a good job. Following the discovery of the affair evidence, the divorce between my husband and me was smoothly finalized. The affair partner paid compensation, and my ex-husband was responsible for alimony and child support. After our divorce, I thought my ex-husband would end up with his affair partner, but that didn't happen. The affair between my ex-husband and the female coworker wasn't just a rumor, it was true, and they became the talk of the company, receiving cold stares from everyone around. Unable to withstand the atmosphere at work, the affair partner resigned. Moreover, she began to make unfounded claims that it was my ex-husband's fault she had to leave her job and that I demanded compensation from her. Eventually, my ex-husband and his affair partner broke up. My ex-husband remained at the company because he had to pay not only alimony but also child support for our children. His income should have been enough to cover the child support payments. However, my ex-husband was demoted and received a pay cut because of the affair. Normally, an affair is a private matter that shouldn't affect one's professional evaluation. But the affair led to the partner's resignation. It apparently had a negative impact on regular operations, and he was penalized for it. He might face difficulties at work from now on, but that has nothing to do with our children, so he'll have to pay child support for both. After the divorce, I moved back to my parents' house with the kids since I'm not working at the moment. With my parents helping with childcare, the burden has been significantly lightened. I think I might be able to work again once the kids are a bit older. Until then, I plan to enjoy happy moments, watching my adorable kids grow. My name is Mia Scott. I'm a 42-year-old office worker. My family consists of my husband and 3 daughters, making us a family of 5. I met my husband, Tom, who is 3 years older than me, through work connections between our companies. Our eldest daughter, Tabitha, is 14 years old and is a busy middle schooler, juggling studies and activities, and hanging out with friends on weekends. Our middle daughter, Violet, is 12 and has recently gotten a smartphone, which she operates better than us adults. Our youngest daughter, Yvonne, just turned 10 last month. She's a little darling who is pampered by her older sisters. Our family has always been close. We've had our small disagreements but have never had a big fight. Just the other day, we celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary by dining out as a family. We were all excited about going to the fancy restaurant my husband had booked. Seeing us so happy made my husband smile with joy. I truly believe, from the bottom of my heart, that our family of 5 will continue to get along well and go through life without any major problems, without a doubt in my mind. Then, one day happened. That day, I was working from home. When I momentarily stopped working to look at the clock, it was about time for the girls to come home. I decided to prepare some snacks and take a break, and just as I was stretching, I heard the sound of the front door opening. "Welcome back." As I went downstairs to greet them, Yvonne, with her small voice, said, "I'm home." Yvonne, carrying her bright red backpack, kept her head down as she took off her shoes and hurried to the living room. Seeing her face looking so burdened, I wondered if something had happened at school. "Yvonne, what's wrong? Did something happen at school?" "Huh? No, nothing's wrong. After washing her hands and gargling, Yvonne sat on the living room sofa, and I offered her some orange juice and snacks. Sitting gently beside Yvonne, I stroked her small head. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to, but just remember this, I will always be on your side, no matter what. With a gentle voice, Yvonne clenched her cup tightly and slowly started to speak. Mom. Yes? Dad was seen by a friend from the same class who has even come over to our house to play. The word dad suddenly appeared and made me jump. What could my husband have possibly done? Dad was seen the other day with the mom of a kid in the same class, and they said, isn't that an affair? What? I was frozen by the shock of Yvonne's words. My husband was seen with the mom of a child in Yvonne's class. I was confused, but more concerned about Yvonne right in front of me. Yvonne, having finished speaking, was teary-eyed. Mom, an affair is a bad thing, right? Was Dad doing something bad? Well, I was at a loss for what to say. The possibility that my husband might be having an affair. And to learn about it through a friend of my daughter. I looked at Yvonne intently. I wanted to avoid any clumsy lies or evasions as much as possible. Yes, having an affair is indeed a very bad thing. But I can't believe that Dad would do that. I'm just as surprised to hear this for the first time. So. Yes, we'll ask Dad when he gets back. So, let's keep this between you and me for now, okay? With that, Yvonne nodded, yeah. I was determined to clear up my daughter's suspicions as soon as possible. I would like to talk to Yvonne's friend who allegedly witnessed it. And if it's the mom of a child in the same class, there's a high chance I know her. That night, I greeted my husband at the entrance, who returned home just before the date changed. He was surprised to see me awake, waiting for him at this hour. What's up? It's rare for you to be up at this time. Did something happen? He asked with a look of concern, appearing his usual self. I took a deep breath and asked. You see, today Yvonne told me that you were seen with a woman I don't know. Huh? The voice that escaped my husband was low and cold. I was taken aback. No. It was Yvonne's friend who saw it, but Yvonne is feeling anxious about it. So, I thought it must be a misunderstanding, but just wanted to check. Of course. My husband raised his voice, cutting over mine as I rushed my words in a panic. Then, realizing it was the time when our daughters were sleeping, he suddenly lowered his voice. That's gotta be a misunderstanding by Yvonne's friend. First off, was it even me? And if it was probably just me out on business with a colleague. There's nothing shady going on. Well, seriously. Don't bother me with such nonsense when I'm tired. I'm going to take a shower. With those words, spoken as quickly as mine and without losing speed, my husband handed me his bag and hurried off to the changing room. For the first time in our 15 years of marriage, I saw an unmistakably unnatural behavior from my husband. Far from reassuring, the conversation only increased my suspicion. According to Yvonne's friend, the woman my husband was with was the mother of Yvonne's classmate. However, I've never heard of an employee from my husband's company being a parent of a child in the same class as Yvonne. Since I only mentioned seeing him with an unknown woman, it seemed like he made up a convenient lie. Once suspicion takes root, it knows no bounds. Yet, part of me still wanted to believe my husband. To dispel my doubts, I started to discreetly investigate his surroundings. Soon enough, I found undeniable evidence of his affair. What? He's been in a relationship with this woman all along? As I was about to collapse in shock, I heard my daughter's voice, Mom, what's wrong? Turning around, there were my eldest, Tabitha, and my middle daughter, Violet. Oh, it's nothing. I tried to hide what I was holding, but Violet circled behind me and quickly snatched it away. Hey, wait! What's this? Let me see, what is this? As my two daughters were shocked, I held my head in my hands. I never wanted them to see something like this. Mom, what is this about? Pressed by Tabitha, I hesitated to speak. But, having been witness to this extent, I couldn't lie. I decided to tell the truth.
It seems like Dad has been in an affair with this woman for a while.
What? I can't believe it. Upon hearing the fact that their father had committed adultery, Tabitha's eyes widened in shock, and Violet clenched her fists and exclaimed, "Hey, let's ask Dad about this when he comes back." "Right, Mom. It's better to clear these things up. We can't pretend not to see it anymore," they said with determination, placing their hands on mine which were on my knees. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. What strong allies I have. Yes, we can't ignore this any longer. Let's clarify everything and then think about what to do next. And we'll also tell Yvonne the truth. With that resolution, I immediately brought it up with my husband when he came home. "Hey, you're really having an affair, aren't you?" "Huh? What's this all of a sudden? We talked about this before. It's probably just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" "Yeah. What's this? Yvonne's still worried." "Fine, I'll talk to her directly." "Stop, I'll explain it to Yvonne." "If you say it's a misunderstanding, then can you explain this to me?" I said, spreading the photos I had been clutching on the table. There, photos of my husband and an unknown woman embracing each other naked were scattered. Each photo, taken on the same bed, was enough to confirm the relationship between the two. "What, you?" My husband's eyes widened as he stared at the photos. Seeing his reaction, I felt a sense of disillusionment. "What's with that reaction? I found these photos in the closet of your room. Who do you think has been putting away your laundry every day? To think it was placed where it could be found just by shifting things a little, were you even trying to hide it? It's as if you threw it in the closet hoping I would find it." I went on, and my husband bit his lip in frustration. After looking at the photos and then at me, he let out a long sigh. Then, looking up, he gave me a look of resignation I had never seen before. "It's out now, yeah, I've been having an affair for a long time. You're so oblivious, it was actually funny how you never noticed." "Since when have you been having an affair?" "Oh, it's been a while. Probably since Yvonne was born. You just weren't into it anymore. It got boring. That's when I ran into her again, my ex-girlfriend." "Ex-girlfriend?" "She's an ex-girlfriend from college. We bumped into each other once, went out for drinks, and one thing led to another. It's been an affair ever since. Well, she's also married with kids, and it doesn't seem like she plans to end up anywhere with me. So, just let it slide, will you?" "Huh?" I couldn't believe the words that came out of my husband's mouth. Look the other way? My husband's affair? Why? Why should I have to do that? My husband, smirking as if mocking me, was in front of me, laughing it off. I felt my patience snap. "Look the other way? There's no way I can do that. Do you even realize what you've done? Having an affair is the ultimate betrayal to me and our daughters. How can you just laugh it off? I can't believe it." As I yelled, my husband's smile faded, and he snorted dismissively. "What are you talking about? It's your fault for not being there for me. That's why I ended up having an affair. So, you should just accept it. Ah, I never thought you'd be such a difficult woman. If you're going to complain this much, should we just get a divorce? You can't do it, can you? The girls need their father." I couldn't stand to look at my husband's face, which seemed to look down on me, for another second. As I left the living room, I ran into Tabitha and Violet, who must have been eavesdropping at the door. "I'm sorry, you too. I can't take it anymore." They both nodded solemnly. I could no longer see my husband as a father worthy of these children after he spouted such nonsense. We decided to leave the house. Either way, a calm discussion seemed impossible at the moment, and I needed to calm my own mind. We packed our things in record time and left the house. My husband didn't say anything. But his eyes seemed to say, "You'll regret this." When I called my parents' house and explained the situation, my mother said, "Come right over." In the car on the way to my parents' house, I explained everything to Yvonne, who seemed not to fully understand the situation yet. With Tabitha and Violet's help, it seemed Yvonne understood that Dad had done something terrible and hurt Mom. When we arrived at my parents' house, my mother welcomed us. "I'm back, Mom."
Come on, don't make that face. I guess it's too much to ask. Don't hesitate, you can stay here as long as you need.
My mother's kind words made the anger in my heart subside. What to do next? I can no longer imagine being his wife. To be openly defiant after being exposed for an affair, shifting the blame onto me, I want nothing more to do with such a despicable person. Having such a father is more harmful than beneficial to our daughters. He believed we would be lost without him, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Luckily, my job is going well, so I'm not worried about money for now. I want to get a divorce, receive child support. All I feel now is a desire to have nothing more to do with my husband. But it seemed the girls felt differently. Walking down the hall to the room I used to use, Tabitha whispered to me, "Mom, leave the rest to me."
Huh?
"I've got a plan for Dad's punishment, just you wait," Tabitha said with a smile. Despite being puzzled by my daughter's mysterious words, I responded, "Okay." Honestly, I didn't take her talk of punishment seriously. I thought she was just trying to comfort me, that's what I believed. However, it turns out the girls were serious. Behind my back, they were secretly devising a plan of revenge against their father. A month had passed since we moved to my parents' house. We had gotten used to commuting to work and school from there, and so far, there had been no problems. Surprisingly, my husband contacted me once a week. But instead of apologies, his messages were just complaints like, "Hey, how long are you going to sulk? Get back here and take care of the house. You're not a child." Ignoring all of that, I was moving forward with preparations for a divorce. It was a holiday, and all three daughters had left in the morning to hang out with their friends. Suddenly, my phone rang, and I noticed a message had arrived. When I opened my phone, a message with a meaningful phrase popped up. "Mom, we're about to execute our punishment on Dad. Watch this." Below the message was a URL, which I pressed with a puzzled tilt of my head. It led to a live stream on a video site, and I recognized our former home in the background as my daughter's voice came through. "Hello, everyone. We're about to give our dad a little punishment."
What?
As if responding to my inadvertent question mark, Tabitha began to explain the situation.
For those who are new here, let me explain. Our dad has been having an affair for nearly 10 years, and when it finally came out, he lashed out at us. We left home together with Mom because we couldn't stand just taking it. And yes, this is the dad who's been betraying us for so long. Unforgivable, right? So, we're going to punish him by raiding the scene of his affair right now. No!
Watching the stream, my eyes widened in disbelief. Tabitha's talk of punishment was serious. I hurriedly got into my car and drove to the house we once lived in. The comments section, streaming by at an incredible pace, was filled with encouragement for the punishment and the raid.
All right, let's go inside. Wow, it's been a while, but our house is so dirty.
The entrance and hallway shown on the screen were overflowing with trash, a far cry from the house's former state. As they quietly made their way through the house, they explained in more detail what had been happening. They likely intended for me to hear this as well. Unbeknownst to me, my daughter's plan for revenge was progressing smoothly. Tabitha had anticipated that my husband would bring his mistress to the empty house and had secretly returned to plant listening devices and cameras to catch them in the act. Violet found the mistress's social media account and had been monitoring her movements. Yvonne had even approached the mistress's child, a classmate, to gather information. Such initiative. My own daughters, yet so frighteningly thorough. I drove on, struggling to keep my composure. The stream was just about to raid the bedroom. Though not shown on the screen, Violet and Yvonne must be there with her. My daughters might be engrossed in their punishment of their father, but there's no telling what an infuriated husband might do. What a helpless mother I am, letting my daughters do this. But that's exactly why I must protect them. On the screen, through the bedroom door, the conversation between my husband and his mistress could be heard.
Hey, when is your wife coming back?
It's about time this place got cleaned up. Yeah, maybe she won't come back at all. I never thought she'd be so stubborn and unattractive. It feels stupid to have been with her for 15 years. Hey, why don't we get together from now on? What? You're the one who dumped me back then. I didn't realize what a great woman you were back then. I was young, too. Plus, you said you were tired of your husband as well. It seems like your husband still doesn't know about us. We should just get divorced now. But I don't want to be separated from my kids, and I'd probably get custody, right? I don't want to start working now. Don't worry, I'll take care of you and the kids. My daughters will probably be taken by their mother, and I'll be free. Sure. After such a shallow conversation, the atmosphere changed abruptly. The comment section was overflowing with people egging on the moment of the raid. I arrived in front of the house just as Tabitha was opening the bedroom door. The door swung open with a loud noise. The bed appeared on the screen. A swath of flesh lay across it. There seemed to be an effort not to show faces, as the camera zoomed in on the disgraceful sight of the two.
I'm home!
Tabitha announced loudly.
What? Hey!
My husband's eyes widened in shock.
What? What's this?
The mistress noticed the camera and screamed, diving into the bed. A true scene of chaos unfolded. Tabitha approached the bed briskly. The dopey-looking guy here is our dad, and this lady is Ms. S., the mistress, she announced to the viewers.
Hey! What the hell is this all about? What are you doing?
My husband yelled with biting fury. And Tabitha responded loudly as well.
What are you doing is my line. What are you doing bringing your mistress home in broad daylight? So, you're dedicated to your affair? Affair, you say? Look, I don't know what Mom has told you, but all this is her fault, not mine. It's because of her that I had to have an affair. If you're my daughter, you should believe what your father says. What? What are you talking about? The reason doesn't matter. Being married with kids and having an affair is 100% wrong. After doing it for so long, don't act like a father now. It's disgusting.
I had never seen Tabitha raise her voice like this. She's always been calm, hardly ever fighting with her sisters. That's how I knew her outburst came from genuine anger.
What? Who do you think raised you? If you want gratitude for raising us, then act in a way that's deserving of thanks. At least, there's absolutely nothing to be thankful for in your current behavior. This girl. And what's with that camera?
It's to capture evidence of the affair, of course. That's what this camera is for. My husband glared at Tabitha, attempting to snatch the camera from her hand. Tabitha dodged him at the last moment, putting some distance between them.
Stop it, now! Hey!
And then I, the wife and mother, caught up to the scene. As expected, Violet was waiting outside the bedroom, but Yvonne was nowhere to be seen. I shielded Tabitha behind me.
Mom! Tabitha, doing something so dangerous!
I'm sorry. But we couldn't forgive him. I know. This is for me too, isn't it? Thank you. I stroked Tabitha's head and faced my husband. I pulled out the divorce papers from my pocket and threw them at him. Divorce me now. We don't need a husband or father like you. He raised his eyebrows even more.
Are you serious? You think you can support the girls on your own? I told you, if you just turned a blind eye to the affair, I'd forgive what happened at home. Be smart and beg me for forgiveness, that's the wise way to live.
His utterly selfish argument made my patience snap again.
Do you not realize how selfish you're being? Turn a blind eye to the affair? Beg you for forgiveness? Why should I do any of that, especially when you're not even sorry? Even after all this, you still don't reflect on your actions? Don't joke with me. I don't care how valuable you think you are, but to us, someone who cheats has no value at all. We're done with you.
When I yelled that, my husband gasped in surprise for a moment. However, he did not reconsider his actions and maintained his condescending attitude.
Equal, huh? But don't get it twisted. It's not you dumping me, it's me dumping you.
Saying that, he signed the divorce papers on the bed. No matter what words he threw at me, they just sounded like empty parting shots. And the attempt to claim the upper hand in this situation by talking about dumping was just pitiful. After checking the divorce papers thrown at me as if in retaliation, I said, "I'll be claiming child support in full, so be prepared. To be rid of you, any price is cheap. Just don't come crawling back to me when you run out of money." He then turned to the mistress, now cowering in the corner of the bed. "I'm divorced now. It's your turn. If you divorce, we can be together."
Oh,
From atop the bed, she looked over at my husband, me, and the daughters, becoming even smaller. I knew her. Though we hadn't spoken much, she was definitely Yvonne's friend's mother. Then, the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs was heard. Turning around, I saw Yvonne bringing someone up to the second floor. The mistress's eyes widened, and her lips trembled at the sight of the newcomer.
"Lisa, you did this. Why are you here? Yvonne told me about you and your ex here."
The man who appeared was the mistress's husband. Behind him was a little girl.
Oh,
I had seen this child at Yvonne's school. She still had such a young child, yet she was engrossed in an affair with my husband. I was utterly disgusted, being confronted by her husband. The girl left at the bedroom entrance seemed unable to comprehend the situation, looking bewildered.
Mom, what are you doing with Yvonne's dad? Sally, it's not what it looks like. Hey, don't show Sally weird things.
As the husband stepped forward to protect the girl, Violet and Yvonne quickly grabbed her hand.
"Let's wait over there until the talk is finished."
After ensuring that Sally, the girl referred to as Suzuka, nodded slightly, the three slowly headed towards the room they once shared as sisters. Then, a scream was heard. I turned towards the source of the scream. The mistress was seen with a pale face looking at her smartphone.
Hey! What's this all about suddenly? Wait! What is this? It's being streamed! A friend just told me. Aren't you the one in this stream?
The husband and mistress looked at each other. It seemed they had just realized that this turmoil was being live-streamed. Behind me, Tabitha continued to hold the camera, and the husband and mistress turned their heads towards her in unison, like rusty tin figures making the exact same movement. Their screams echoed throughout the house. A few days later, a meeting was arranged involving me, my in-laws, my husband, the mistress, her husband, and lawyers. Right from the start, my husband knelt down before me.
"I'm sorry, Mia. I apologize for everything I've done up to now. Please, forgive me."
I responded with a cold look, remaining silent. My husband continued to plead.
"That stream went viral, my identity was exposed, and my photos were leaked. I have nowhere to go now. I can't even stay at my job, and you understand I won't be able to pay child support, right? Please, forgive me. It's just one apology."
"Just one?" I looked down at him.
"You don't seem to understand how much that just one time has hurt us. Mia! And, you say once, but you've been having an affair for nearly 10 years, right? How can you even ask for forgiveness?"
My husband groaned in frustration, rubbing his forehead against the floor. I looked down on him without any sympathy. The divorce between me and my husband was successfully finalized, and I ensured that he promised to pay child support in full. Both my husband and his mistress had their faces exposed nationwide due to the live stream. Though the account itself got suspended because the video was quite risque, such is the nature of this internet society. The live stream video, saved by someone unknown, keeps being posted and deleted without permission, making it impossible to completely erase once it has entered the vast sea of the internet. As a result of the video, my husband became the talk of the town at his workplace, and the mistress in her neighborhood, both of them in extremely uncomfortable situations. Unable to withstand it, my husband voluntarily resigned. However, due to the obligations of child support payments, he's been working somewhere, somehow managing while repeatedly borrowing money. The mistress and her husband also divorced. Sally ended up transferring schools, but the letter exchanges between Yvonne and Sally continue. My daughters momentarily became heroes at school, but as with all children's trends, the topic quickly changed, ever so fleeting. Becoming a single mother, I was thankfully offered a promotion to an overseas branch. After much discussion with all three daughters, we decided to move abroad. From now on, we four want to do our best as a family.
Thanks to Ali being gone, I can play around so freely, it's like a whole new world, man. Yeah, seriously, thanks for being gone, Ali.
My son's words made me pause. They were exactly the same as what was written on a photo I saw in my daughter-in-law's coffin. Maybe, just maybe, that terrible prank wasn't actually my son's doing. As I began to think about it, I couldn't shake the feeling that my son was suspicious. After seeing the two off for their outing, I decided to search my daughter-in-law's room to see if there was anything left behind. There was no doubt that my daughter-in-law's passing was an accident. But I couldn't forgive their attitudes, and I couldn't shake the thought that something else might have happened. Even though it was just a matter of duty, I desperately searched, relying on my mother's intuition. In the sparsely decorated room, I found a diary. Ali, sorry for reading this without permission. I apologized silently as I flipped through the pages. With a tense expression, I continued reading the diary, hoping to find some truth. What was written there far exceeded my expectations, detailing numerous horrible events. Are you kidding me? Harry wasn't the only one, but even my husband was involved in such things? What I found there were numerous heinous acts against the two daughters-in-law that I didn't know about. Instead of showing remorse, the attitudes of my husband and son seemed to worsen, prompting me to seek revenge. I'm Violet. I'll be 62 this year. I've been living with my son's family, and I thought we got along reasonably well. But it all fell apart suddenly. One day, my daughter-in-law got into a traffic accident and became a victim. With only my son Harry left, Ali, my daughter-in-law, was like a precious daughter to me. Ali lost her parents early, and she had looked up to me as a mother figure. Despite her gentle demeanor, Ali, who was considerate and kind, was so dear to me that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say I cared for her more than my son. Losing such a cherished daughter-in-law left me in despair for a while. Mom, we also have to prepare for Ali's funeral, so please don't stay down forever. Be strong. Yeah, you're right. We need to stay strong. Ali wouldn't want us to be distressed. Urged by my son, I finally faced Ali's accident and began to deal with the procedures. I was so deeply saddened that I couldn't understand at the time why my son seemed so unaffected. On the day of the funeral, I cried until my eyes were swollen red. Ali was a hard worker, diligently working at my relative's company. I heard about what a thoughtful and kind girl she was, and the funeral was attended by many relatives who mourned her loss. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for being my daughter. As I bid farewell to her while saying those words, I couldn't help but notice a photo inside the coffin. Taking it in my hand, it was a family photo taken when we went on a family trip. Someone must have thought it was a good idea to include it. That's what I thought, but strangely, Ali wasn't in the photo. It wasn't originally taken without her, she should have been at the far edge of the photo, but she was cut out. Curious, I absent-mindedly flipped it over, and handwritten words jumped out at me, "Thanks for being gone." Shocked by the unexpected and horrifying words, I let out a gasp and sat down right there. Mom, what's wrong? This. I showed the photo to my son, pale-faced. My son's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly dismissed it, saying, "It's just a prank," and pocketed the photo, returning to his seat. I couldn't believe my son's reaction and instinctively called out to him, raising my voice. Just a prank? That's ridiculous. Who would do something so insensitive in a place like this? Please, be quiet until the funeral is over. We can talk about it later. Talk about it later? How can we possibly calm down when there might be someone here capable of doing such a thing? Ali deserves better. I pleaded desperately with my son, but he shook his head, refusing to engage with me. Instead, He seemed to find my raised voice in such a solemn setting irritating, even giving me a look of annoyance. Feeling convinced that there was someone with malicious intent who had put this photo in Ali's coffin, I couldn't calm down. Driven by confusion, I rushed out of the funeral hall, pulling out my phone to call the police.
Anyway, there's someone here who did something so malicious.
I'm sorry, my mother is just very distraught. She's not herself. The officers who arrived listened empathetically to my story, but they said there was no way to determine who had put it there. Even when I explained that my daughter-in-law was killed in a traffic accident and that the driver responsible had already been caught, and there were no leads on any other suspects, the police officers just looked puzzled, as if they were at a loss. Hey, can't you calm down already? Making such a fuss like this won't let Ali rest in peace. Yeah, Mom. Dad's right. Furthermore, my son and husband, the very people I needed support from, started calling my agitation over a mere prank embarrassing. My gentle husband and son, who tried to calm down their distraught family member who had lost important loved ones. That's how it must have looked to the police. But from my perspective, it was far more terrifying to see the two of them acting nonchalantly despite what had been done during our family member's funeral.
Hey, why? Even if it's just a prank, it's malicious. Why can you stay so calm about it?
Just because. Making a fuss like this won't make Ali happy. Yeah, exactly. What's the point of trying to find the culprit? Perhaps to the other mourners at the funeral, it may have seemed like I was just making a scene for no reason. After being told by other relatives to calm down, I obediently returned to my seat. Despite it being a family funeral, the fact that the two of them didn't shed a single tear made me suspicious beyond belief. They promised to talk after the funeral, so I managed to keep myself strong at least for the duration of the service. I had to bid farewell to my precious daughter-in-law properly. With that sentiment in my heart, I tightly gripped my handkerchief throughout the funeral. After returning home from the funeral, I finally had a conversation with the two of them. When I demanded to find the culprit who put that photo and make them apologize to my daughter-in-law, they exchanged glances and shook their heads, saying something outrageous. Isn't it possible that Ali might have earned someone's grudge?
What are you talking about?
Anyway, since it's just a prank, there's no need to make such a fuss. Ali can't do anything about it now. With that, they chuckled and left without listening to me any further. Even though they should have been important to each other, why did they become so cold? I couldn't understand and could only feel disappointed in them. After the funeral, they didn't even pray in front of Ali's photo, and they frowned at me when I did it, showing their disdain. Maybe one of them wasn't the one who put that photo. As such thoughts crossed my mind, they started doing things that seemed to confirm it. My husband, who had always enjoyed activities like horse racing, and my son, who had been influenced by him. Since the funeral, they had been going out to play quite frequently. I must say, you two seem to be having quite a good time. Must be nice to have such a good budget for outings. We're doing okay as usual. It's just that we got some money for entertainment purposes. Where did you get that money from? It's from Ali's insurance. I was speechless at my son's casual remark about something so outrageous. Of all things, these two had referred to the insurance money from the deceased family member as money for entertainment. Unable to say anything in response to their heartless words, I lost faith in them. While I stood there pale-faced and speechless, they continued speaking with a laugh.
Thanks to Ali being gone, we can play around so freely, it's like a whole new world, man. Yeah, seriously, thanks for being gone, Ali.
My son's words made me startle. Come to think of it, the same words were written on the back of the photo I saw that time. I began to wonder if my son had actually done it, and I couldn't help but feel increasingly suspicious of him. After seeing the two off for their outing, I decided to search my daughter-in-law's room to see if there was anything left behind. It had been left untouched since the accident. I searched through my daughter-in-law's room, looking around everywhere for anything that might have been left behind. Despite being repeatedly urged by my son and husband to clean up quickly, I couldn't bring myself to tackle it right away and left things as they were. It was in that sparsely furnished room that my son's character became apparent. I found a diary.
Allie, sorry for reading this without permission.
With that apology in my heart, I turned the pages. With a nervous demeanor, I read through the diary, hoping to find some truth. What I found there far exceeded my expectations. It was a series of terrible events. Are you kidding me? Not just Harry, but even my husband was involved in such things? The diary detailed numerous harassments from my husband and son. It seemed my husband had been treating Allie like a servant in my absence, issuing various orders and harassment. Furthermore, there were accounts of discussions with my son about these issues. However, it seemed my son refused to listen and even joined in on disparaging behavior with my husband. Under the guise of decency, they repeatedly harassed her behind closed doors, and Allie endured it all without complaint, as recorded over many days. Seeing this, a question arose in my mind.
Why didn't you ever talk to me about it?
While I felt sorry for not realizing the abnormal situation regarding Allie, I couldn't help but wonder why she never confided in me. Despite thinking that she cherished me like her own mother, I had never been told such stories. Feeling anxious that I might have missed out on hearing her side of things somewhere along the line, I stumbled upon this passage. I can't tell my mother-in-law the way I truly feel. I don't want to make her sad. Those words brought tears to my eyes once again. This kind-hearted daughter-in-law couldn't possibly have earned resentment from anyone. In the latter part of the diary, there were conflicting thoughts about whether she should consult me. In the midst of her turmoil, that accident took my son, her husband, away. Thinking of the pain my daughter-in-law must have endured, my heart felt like it was being torn apart. I clenched the diary tightly, deciding to seek revenge against the two of them. Before they returned home, I made calls here and there. I planned to strike them down to repay my son for choosing her as his wife. Fortunately, my daughter-in-law had earned the trust of many people due to her character. As a result, many were willing to assist me in my revenge. I made call after call as if possessed, requesting cooperation without revealing my true intentions. With each call, I was reminded of my daughter-in-law's virtues.
That's what happened, I understand now. Please let me help. Thank you.
I said my gratitude over the phone. Like me, there were many people who were furious with those two. While I was glad, I also felt a deep sense of regret. I wanted to let my daughter-in-law know that she had so many allies. With regret for not being able to protect her weighing heavily on my heart, I rallied myself. On a Sunday when the plan for revenge finally took shape, I summoned the two of them to a certain place. It was a restaurant, but there I first presented my husband with a pre-filled divorce form and asked for a divorce.
Huh? What's this all of a sudden?
It's not sudden.
Don't you have any idea why?
Could it be about Allie? As I nodded, my husband looked at me with a heavy sigh. Though my husband seemed to think it was a trivial matter, my determination remained firm. Listen, Allie died in a traffic accident, you know? Why do I have to get divorced because of that?
Don't you really have any idea? Put your hand on your heart and think carefully.
Mom, reconsider. Breaking up the family over something like this isn't right, is it? You two are the ones who broke it up. Harry, you too. Please leave the house. I also told my son, who had been playing the role of a mediator and acting as if it didn't concern him, to leave the house. He seemed to have just realized that he was involved too and started to panic, asking why all of a sudden. Originally, the house we were living in was one I had been paying the mortgage for. I didn't want these two, who had belittled my beloved daughter, to live there anymore. When they realized I was serious, they started apologizing to me in a conciliatory tone. We're sorry about the prank. If you need money, I can share some of the insurance money with you. Yeah, why don't we ask the people who attended the funeral right now? If it'll make you feel better, we can do that, Mom.
What I'm upset about isn't that.
I sighed at their off-target apologies this time. At this point, had they completely forgotten what they had done? If so, I needed to remind them. So, I placed the diary of my daughter-in-law, which I had in my bag, on the table. At first, both of them looked puzzled, but as I began to read the contents, both my husband and son started to pale. "What's that? Why do you have something like that?" "It's Allie's diary. It seems like you two were pretty cruel to her behind my back." "What do you mean by cruel? We were just getting along as a family, weren't we?"
"Using her and treating her like a servant in the house, is that what you call being a family?"
"Yeah, so what?"
"I was just teaching Allie, who didn't have parents, how to be dutiful to her parents."
The one who first showed his true colors without any remorse was my husband, Tom. He said things like he had been doing his daughter-in-law a favor by treating her like a servant, without feeling sorry at all. It was the first time I felt like slapping that detestable face of his. As for my son, Harry, he was stumbling over his words, trying to justify himself once the truth came out. After some pressing, he finally admitted that he had been influenced by his father's attitude. Despite making excuses, I was disappointed by their attitude, as if trying to imply that my daughter-in-law was also at fault. In the end, both of them concluded that my daughter-in-law wasn't part of their family at all. In my heart, I apologized to her, acknowledging that she hadn't been treated like family by them. Well, I got mad because Allie seemed to be getting too full of herself, thinking she was better at work than me. She was just a daughter-in-law who couldn't even keep a smile on her husband's face. This is what happens when there's no parental guidance. Even after the funeral, she's still an ungrateful daughter.
"She's not your daughter. She's my only daughter."
"What are you talking about, Mom? You only have me as your child, right?"
"You're not my family anymore, either. Both of you, get out of my house."
My true family was only my daughter-in-law, Allie. After all the terrible things they had done without remorse, I didn't want to call them family anymore. The two of them, thinking they could intimidate me if they outnumbered me, stood up and raised their voices.
"Are you trying to kick your family out of the house? And all for the sake of a stranger who's no longer in this world? You're the ones who took away her place here in the first place."
I shouted back without yielding an inch. Even as the table was pounded and they yelled at me, I glared at my husband without flinching. Perhaps frustrated by my unwavering defiance, my son reached out for the diary he was holding in his arms. Just as he was about to snatch it away, it was the president of the company where my daughter-in-law and son worked who stopped him.
"Sir! What are you doing here?"
"I heard from Violet here.
Seems like you've been giving our precious employee a hard time."
Seeing someone step in just in time to mediate, I breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, without their knowledge, I had invited the president who knew my daughter-in-law and his colleagues to this meeting. Seeing his senior and junior colleagues, filled with anger, gathering behind my son, he seemed to tremble.
"I was just planning to watch the discussion and leave, but since it seems like there's no remorse, I couldn't help but speak up. I'm not at fault. It was my father who took the lead and mistreated my wife."
"Even so, didn't you do nothing to help? You thought your wife, who came to your home, was getting too full of herself just because she was good at her job, didn't you? That's,
We don't need employees with such low popularity around here."
Surrounded by everyone, perhaps realizing they had no chance of winning, the two of them crumbled on the spot. Trying desperately to beg for forgiveness now, they even prostrated themselves on the floor, but I shook my head and said, "You're asking the wrong person for forgiveness."
"Oh, but isn't even being on your knees too much to ask? I'm sure Allie wouldn't want to see your faces either."
With that, I left them behind and walked away. Seeing their thoroughly dejected faces, I finally felt a slight sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Having them fill out divorce papers, my husband and I officially became strangers. Yet they still lingered in the house, unwilling to leave, so I gave them a stern warning and had movers come to take their belongings away. Now, they're barely managing to get by, having rented a small, cheap apartment. The president, who had shown kindness to my daughter-in-law, deeply apologized for failing to notice her situation like I had. He also expressed considerable indignation towards my son's attitude towards his wife, informing me that he terminated his employment contract. Although he's still hanging around as a part-time worker, he's apparently feeling quite uncomfortable at work, being glared at by colleagues who know the situation. As for my ex-husband, It seemed he had used up most of his savings on horse racing and would occasionally come to my house asking to borrow money. He would complain about being scolded by our son multiple times for his reckless spending, even though our livelihood was precarious. Despite being in such dire straits, my ex-husband would come crying to me, saying he couldn't even enjoy his one remaining pleasure of horse racing. Even when pushed to the brink, he showed no remorse for his actions, and I would repeatedly send him away, threatening to call the police. Apologize to Allie. Though, even if you do, it won't make things right.
I'm sorry. That's why I need you to lend me money.
If you're truly sorry, why don't you find a part-time job or help our son? If our son abandons you, you'll really be left with nothing. With that, I would shut the door in his face. For a while, my ex-husband would pound on the door, cursing me and my daughter-in-law, but if left alone long enough, he would eventually disappear. In the finally quiet living room, I clasped my hands together in prayer for my daughter-in-law. I still sometimes wonder and regret if I could have done something more for her as a mother, a little earlier. The photo I found in the coffin at the time was something both my son and husband vehemently claimed to know nothing about. While I initially thought one of them was behind the ongoing harassment, perhaps it was a message from my daughter-in-law all along. Though it's too late to do anything for her now, I hope she finds some peace knowing what happened to the two of them, as I looked at the precious photo of my daughter and wished for that.